Welcome to the Utopian Baseball Universe. This is Joey Buckholz and Chuck Johnson returning here tonight to talk about the Philadelphia Phillies. Chuck is going to share a couple of Phillies-related stories. I'll share one of my own. Of course, we'll get to the roster. Charlie Manuel called that into me today. If you do have any questions or comments, feel free to post that into the comments. We'll get to those at the end of the show. But Chuck, thanks again for showing up tonight. A member of the Two-Timers Club here in the Utopian Baseball Universe. I was telling Chuck the first World Series I ever watched was Phillies-Orioles in 1983 on like a 10-inch black and white TV. Pete Rose was probably my first non-Brewer player that I really followed closely. I had all his baseball cards. I had a couple of books, like kids-based books about baseball, and Pete Rose was very prominent in that. And this isn't the exact hat, but this model hat was the first non-Brewers hat I ever owned. My dad got me this, or not this one, but something similar at a game at County Stadium in '83. So that's my little tie-in to the Phillies, and Philadelphia just happens to be one of my favorite cities, and I spent about 3 weeks there in 2016 and look forward to returning. Chuck is our guest tonight. Chuck was with us Thursday. Chuck, what do you have to share about the Phillies in general?
Well, there's really only one important question to ask here. Is it Pat's or is it Gino's?
So I wasn't there long enough to go to either, but I've heard great things about both. I actually have a friend who lives in Jersey that says Pat's.
It's Pat's. The correct answer is Pat's.
Correct answer is Pat's. Now tell the viewers, because I know what you're talking about, but tell the viewers what you're referring to.
Cheesesteaks. Pat's cheesesteaks. You know, cheesesteak on every corner. There's Tony Luke's. There's Gino's. They're on the Pat's and Gino's are, 100 yards from each other. If you don't like one, you walk across the street and get the other one. But, it's just like pizza. It's just like, except in Chicago. Chicago doesn't have pizza, but, it's cheesesteak and it's a roll, but, we all have our favorites.
So now, all right, now, not to get off on it, but now, did you just say that Chicago doesn't have pizza?
No, what they serve is a casserole.
All right. This could be another themed show.
Okay, bring it. I'll debate. I'm a New Yorker, not a New Yorker, but I'm an East Coast guy and spent more than enough time in the Bronx with Yankee games and all of that stuff, and they do it right over down there.
I think if anything, this is going to have to be a poll question because I happen to love both. I won't vote in it. I won't pick a favorite, but I've heard the argument on both sides. How obviously they're very different. Chicago a deeper dish. New York obviously known for their thin crust, but again, that's for another time. Tell us some of your Phillies memories. As it relates to the team on the ball field, the Philadelphia Phillies.
So, I'll just tell a general story, and this kind of just shows you how naive I was when I first started getting into sports, and the expectations of working in Reading and working in the Philadelphia area with the Phillies and how much they support their teams, and then going to work in Holyoke or Lynn or some of the other minor league towns that I was working in. They could care less that they had minor league sports in their town. So, my first assignment with the Eastern League was in Reading, and I remember we left end of February to drive down to get ready to start the season. We sold advertising. We sold the tickets. We sold ticket packages. We sold scoreboard advertising, program advertising. So we were going to go down there a month before the season started and, get a head start on a lot of that stuff. And we picked up a couple of guys and we're driving down and we stopped in a restaurant in Stratford, Connecticut, and we were watching a college basketball game, Indiana State and Wichita State. It was the first time I had ever heard of Larry Bird. So we get down to Philadelphia and we get down to Reading and you know, it's down there, it's whatever sport. I mean, Philadelphia is primarily a baseball town, but they will, you know, root on their other teams, especially if they're doing well. And in '79, the Phillies were 3-time defending National League East champions. They had just signed Rose. The Flyers ended up going to the Eastern Conference Finals against the Rangers, who we just spent 6 months working for before baseball started again. The Sixers were in the quarterfinals. They lost to San Antonio. And that was also the last time that an Ivy League school went to the Final Four. University of Pennsylvania was in the Final Four along with Indiana State and Magic Johnson's Michigan State. So the sports scene for the 2.5 months that we were there was unbelievable. Philadelphia and Reading are only about an hour apart. The Spectrum and the Vet are actually in the same parking lot. You can walk across the street without moving your car. I remember we went to a Phillies game, and it was before Game 6 of the NBA, the quarterfinals. The 76ers were down 3-1. They won in San Antonio and were coming back for Game 6. So they asked the Phillies to move their game up so they can be on national TV and have their game start at 4 o'clock. Well, the Phillies game was over. We went downstairs underneath the arena, got into a couple of golf carts. Ron Reed, who was a relief pitcher for the Phillies, prior to playing for the Phillies, actually played a couple of seasons in the NBA. So he had NBA connections. So we're riding across the parking lot in a golf cart. We go into the arena, pull into the downstairs, go up an elevator, came out, and we're right where the concourse is, where the players came off the court, watching Game 6 of the quarterfinals. So here I am thinking, like, man, this is gravy. This is awesome. You know, sports is going to, you know, this is what's going to be like for the rest. I'll do this for the rest of my life. And boy, was I in for a rude awakening. But the Phillies did actually play. Well, they were scheduled to play an exhibition game in Reading. The game was actually rained out. And Philadelphia and Reading are only about an hour apart. So most of the players drove up in their own car. And I remember this certain Phillies player that had been known to place a bet or two walking into the ballpark with a racing form in his hand and went into the general manager's office and closed the door and promptly proceeded to do his thing with his racing form.
Did his last name rhyme with nose?
Yeah, it did. It did, actually.
Okay.
But, you know, we got to meet the guys and, you know, you look at the Phillies roster. The third day we were there, the third day we were in Reading, got a knock on the door, open up the door. Hey, how you doing? I'm Mike Schmidt. Yeah, and I'm Santa Claus. Have a good day. And I closed the door. I said, wait a minute. Hold on a second. That really was Mike Schmidt. So I opened up the door again. I am so sorry. I'm really, bad. Because a lot of the guys that lived in the area come to Reading and they would work out at the stadium in Reading. They'd take batting practice and they would hit. So they're getting ready to leave for spring training. So he was coming to get his bats and his gloves and whatever equipment he had. And he just happened to knock on the door and come inside. And it's like, well, I could do this for a while. But like I said, then you move on to other cities and it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. But that was my introduction. And it was for the Phillies, primarily in Reading. But, like I said, we got to go down and Ozzie Virgil played there and Mark Davis and Sandberg played in 1980. And, they won the Eastern League title in 1980. So Phillies won the World Series. So it was a good experience, and it was a good first start to a career that didn't last as long. They say that 80% of the people make 20% of the money, so it wasn't something you were going to get rich off of, but for sure. But the fringe benefits were certainly there.
So one of the things we do a lot every day, basically, in the Utopian Baseball Universe is we kind of imagine things and wonder what would happen if this player faced this player and so on. Who would win a best of 7 between the 1980 Phillies and the 2008 Phillies.
I'm prejudiced, obviously, because that's more my era. So I'm a little partial to 1980. That's a good question. I can't. Obviously, if you're going to run out Steve Carlton, and certainly Steve Carlton would have pitched 9 innings, and he would have pitched on 3 days rest. So you would have had to beat. If you're going to beat that team in a 7-game series, you're going to have to beat Carlton at least twice, and I'm not sure they could have done that. That team, the 2008 team was, if I recall, left-hand dominant. They had Bobby Abreu, and they had Utley, and they had
Howard.
Ryan Howard. There's another. So you got 3 lefties right off the top right away, and then you got you're dealing with certainly without much debate, probably one of the top 5 left-handers of all time. So I'm leaning 1980. Again, prejudice plays a big role in it, but you're not going to beat Carlton 3 times in the 7-game series. You're just not.
Good point. Yep. So speaking of, I wanted to pose that question as a segue into the roster that we're going to reveal here shortly, because there's obviously going to be a good representation of the 80s team, a good representation of that 2008 team, sprinkle in some current players as well. Towards the end, as we did Thursday, this is where Chuck is going to tell me where I went wrong, and then you guys can do that as well in the comments. Before we get to the roster itself, let's look at some highlights for the Phillies schedule. The Phillies are going to actually open their season at home against the Cardinals. So we know, we'll know who's going to play for the Phillies here shortly, but we do know that Bob Gibson will be starting for the Cardinals. So we'll see who he faces here shortly. May 31st, Memorial Day at the Nationals. Independence Day at home against Seattle. Labor Day, September 6th at the Mets. And then the Phillies finishing their season September 26th at Baltimore. So let's see what, again, these are Charlie Manuel's decisions here. These are not my decisions. I'm just reading them to the people. This is what the Phillies lineup is going to look like on opening day, March 26th, Friday against the Cardinals. We've got leadoff hitter, shortstop Jimmy Rollins. Batting second baseman Chase Utley. Batting third baseman Mike Schmidt. Cleanup hitter Ryan Howard. Chuck Klein hitting 5th and playing right field. JT Realmuto batting 6th and catching. Batting 7th, left fielder Bobby Abreu. Batting 8th, center fielder Richie Ashburn. And batting 9th and starting for the 2nd straight year, Steve Carlton. So we're looking at Steve Carlton versus Bob Gibson on opening day. And then before I get Chuck's reaction to this, let's look at the bench for the position players. We've got Darren Dalton, John Kruk, Juan Samuel, Alec Boehm, Larry Boa, Greg Luzinski, Shane Victorino, and Von Hayes. So Chuck, let me know what you think here, and any glaring omissions from the position players.
I don't see Dick Allen.
So Dick Allen is on the Durham Bulls roster. That was, again, another tougher decision. Do I put him in Chicago? Do I put him in Philly? I just thought last year it made more sense to have him start and be featured as the starting first baseman for Durham last year. I didn't see him starting over Howard or Frank Thomas. So Dick Allen is represented, but he's just in another city.
So the Phillies, the Rays have a 22-year history. The Phillies have a 132-year history. So you've got certainly a lot more players to pick from. And the Phillies, as we all know, really haven't been a successful franchise over the years in terms of the postseason. So that certainly can explain why we're a little bit more modern heavy on this roster. I can certainly see that. I'm kind of, looking at Johnny Callison is maybe an omission. Maybe Andy Semenick is a possible omission behind the plate. You can go all the way back to Del Ennis, who I believe during the war years won a batting title. So, there's certainly, some omissions, but again, understanding that recency, they're, within the last 20 years have probably been the most successful that they've been in that kind of a stretch in franchise history outside of that late 70s run that they had. Could you make a place for Dave Cash? Sure. Gary Maddox, two-thirds of the earth is covered by water and the other third is covered by Gary Maddox. Greg Luzinski, for sure, would certainly warrant some from the 70s teams. But again, that's a pretty good roster.
And I do have Luzinski on the bench, so he'll definitely get some playing time this year. Some of those names you mentioned, we're going to see over time. The idea is if you don't see them this year, there's a chance they were on the roster last year, or I could bring them in as free agents in future years. But just to strengthen Chuck's point, I'm not sure a lot of people realize that the Phillies, one of the original National League franchises, didn't win their first championship till 1980. So we're talking about a team, you talk about the Red Sox had to wait 86 years and the Cubs had to wait 108 years. The Phillies had to wait 104 years because they were an original team in 1876 and won their first championship in 1980 before coming back in 2008 and winning the championship. So that was a historic wait period for a city as well. Let's look at the pitching. The Phillies pitched very well last year. This team was in the wild card hunt till about the second to last weekend of the year last year. They bring back Steve Carlton. Robin Roberts pitched well last year. Terry Mulholland, a name you don't think of, went 15-4 last year for the Phillies, so he's earned the right to pitch to start the season in the rotation. Negro League Hall of Famer Leon Day will get the ball against the Royals in their next series. Grover Cleveland Pete Alexander will be the 5 starter. And then also on the roster, Cliff Lee and Aaron Nola, in case one of these starters were to falter. One of these two gentlemen would get a shot first. And then we'll take a look at the bullpen. We got Brad Lidge, Tug McGraw, Ryan Matson, Jim Constancy, Steve Bedrosian, Ron Reed, who Chuck mentioned earlier, and Hector Neris. Any thoughts on the pitching?
I love Terry Mulholland. He's a good guy. I've gotten to know him a little bit. Haven't seen him or talked to him in a long time. But when we first moved out here, his brother was a golf pro at the course that that I used to play at, and Terry was an investor, and so he used to hang out there and play there sometimes in the off season. And you'd walk up, and every once in a while, you'd see him on the putting green or whatever. So he's a good guy, and I remember his no hitter, and the starting staff is, when you got Cliff Lee and Aaron Nola looking to get some back end starts there because there's no room in the rotation, and it's no slight against them, but Mulholland deserves his spot just as much as anybody else does. It's a good rotation. The bullpens are designed to be interchangeable.
Yeah.
Money doesn't grow on trees, but relief pitchers do. So, you got a nice mix there. You got Constanti and you got McGraw, and unfortunately, Bradledge will never live down the home run to give up to Pujols in Houston. But Bedrosian's another one who, for a really short period of time was just as dominant as just about anybody else in the National League. So, again, it's everybody that's on that roster, with probably the exception of Madsen, in my opinion. And, obviously Neris is a current guy, so he deserves it too. But, again, it's a solid staff.
Yeah, we try to get as even a mix as we can of just the first names you think of for Phillies. For me would be Schmidt, Carlton, Howard, Rollins, Robin Roberts, Alexander, and then some of my favorites as a kid. Von Hayes was one of the first, I guess, baseball cards I remember collecting. I don't know if it was the 82 or the 87 set, but I don't know, just in a kind of a unique name. And one of my heroes in life is named Vaughn. So I wanted to put Von Hayes on this roster. Larry Boa was actually the year I started watching baseball hardcore was 84, and Boa was on the Cubs. And in 85, Boa was cut to make room for Sean Dunston, and that was I remember reading that in the paper and crying. 2 years after we lost Gorman Thomas, now the Cubs lose Larry Boa, so I wanted to keep Boa in the universe, and I thought the Phillies were the better option there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just got some colorful characters. You got John Kruk. Real Muto's a bit of a character, the current catcher there in Philadelphia. As far as the pitching, obviously last year's result means something, and that's why Mulholland is the third starter. It doesn't mean that I think he's the third best of these seven, but he pitched so well last year, I wanted to give him the opportunity. And sometimes just having a Hall of Fame resume means something, because Pete Alexander did not pitch well last year. He was 1-8 before he was taken over in the rotation by Cliff Lee, but I wanted to give his resume one more chance, so he's going to be the 5 this year. I think he was the 2 last year, so we try to interchange it. And I've admitted on this show a couple times that I did not do a great job last year with the bullpens, and I did a little bit more research, and that's why we see Constanti this year. And I think relief pitcher is the only position in the Utopian Baseball Universe where I did make additions to pretty much every team.
So we do know what Tug McGraw is known for, correct?
I mean, I know that he was on the 69 team. I know he's got a son that plays country music.
Right.
But
Tim McGraw's dad.
Tim McGraw's dad, yep. Yeah, some people.
Another pitcher that I just thought of too would have been nice to see was Chris Short.
Chris Short. Now, what years did he play?
He was in the 60s. Okay. Left-hander.
Reliever?
No, he was a starter.
He was a starter. Okay. Yeah, like I said, part of the reason I get people on the shows that are familiar with these teams is to help educate me on some of the names that may have been left out, because I'm giving the Utopian Baseball Universe a say in, who starts, fifth starters. We had a vote last night for the first baseman for the Brewers on opening day, but the universe is going to have a bigger say going into year 3 as to who actually makes these rosters, because I want it to be kind of an all-inclusive collaboration, because I want the people watching and the people following this to see the players that they like as well. Chuck, we do have some comments and questions for you here. Let's get to them. So RJ agrees with you. No argument here. New York pizza is better. I just can't choose. I love them both. There's a place in New York called Grimaldi's that I love, and there's a place in Chicago called Gino's East that I love. I'm not going to choose tonight. I can't do it. My buddy Greg says Phillies was one of his Little League teams. We have a vote here for the 80 versus 2008 team here. Beat Sabathia against the Brewers. He was a lefty, so I think someone's referring to Cliff Lee, I'm assuming. Where is Juan Samuel and Lenny Dykstra? So Juan Samuel is on this team. So you'll see on the bottom there, Juan Samuel is on the team. Lenny Dykstra is on the Mets. Lenny Dykstra was my favorite, one of my favorite players growing up, and I'm a Mets fan, so I had to put Dykstra on the Mets.
Isn't he a teammate? Wasn't he a teammate of Ricky Vaughn on the Penitentiary All-Star team or something at one point?
Yeah, probably. Somebody's asking, where's Wild Thing? So I actually put Mitch Williams on the Rangers only because the Rangers have less of a history, so it was harder to fill that roster, and I figured Lidge and McGraw were two solid choices to close out games. So Mitch Williams is on the Rangers, and that's our show tomorrow. RJ says Sherry McGee, great underrated dead baller, arguably one of the top 20 left fielders. So that's, again, a name I'm not familiar with, but in doing research for next year, that's definitely a name I'll consider. And then someone here says, wasn't Ryan Sandberg a Philly? Just asking. Yeah, as Chuck mentioned, Sandberg was drafted by the Phillies. Who did the Phillies get in that Sandberg trade? Do you remember, Chuck?
Manny Trio.
Was it 1-for-1 Trio for Sandberg?
No, I think there was a couple of other guys in it involved, but I think Trio was the main piece.
Okay, yeah. And Sandberg would return to Philly then as manager for a couple of years. But all right, so that's we don't have any more questions tonight. I want to thank Chuck for returning to the show. Chuck's a friend of the show, if you will. I'm sure we'll have him on during the season. Thank you, Chuck.
Sure.
Tomorrow, we've got 5 shows left, folks. We've got tomorrow, Texas Rangers with the hosts of the Basement Show, Nate Miller and Billy Ball. So looking forward to that. Tuesday, we've got the Mariners with Curtis Pitcher. Wednesday night, we've got a different type of show. I'll share more about that as we get closer, but I'm going to have 3 or 4 guests on Wednesday. Thursday night, I've got Eric C. Gray. He's going to read from his latest book, and that's The Giants. And then our last show is Friday night with Jerry Grillo, Atlanta Braves. So for Chuck Johnson, this is Joey Buchholz saying good night, and we'll see you tomorrow at 7 o'clock for the Rangers.
See y'all.